Hey guys, it's Karen here from Artist Sketchbook. I'm joined now with photographer and self-publisher Maxwell Anderson. Max, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for contributing to the channel. Max and I go way back. Early 2000s, we worked together in a photo lab, and during that time, it was quite special because picture taking went hand in hand with the photo print. And when we were working together during that period, there were like two projects that I really admired that you did. One was See You Soon, and then the other, which I sort of want to focus a little bit on now, is Absolute Present. And the reason why I want to do Absolute Present first is I brought with me this little package here. Mind that. But inside is
I haven't seen one of those for ages.
Absolute Present, 1 year anniversary by Maxwell Anderson. And inside, what is so cool about this is, well, it's edition 62 out of 100. So you can tell me, is this worth something now? Because this is like from 2009 or 8, I'd say.
Yeah.
But these
Might be
are
a bit before that. 2008, yeah.
So these are some hard copy prints of the project, which you can check out on his website, maxwellanderson.co.uk. But I just wanted to flip through these because I think what's kind of neat is that you don't really get that sort of tangible picture anymore to enjoy. I mean, we're in such a virtual world right now that you don't get to hold pictures really anymore. And the reason why I wanted to sort of talk about Absolute Present is because it was a long time ago, but for me, I think that this was a sort of introduction to what was to become of you as a photographer, right? Would you say? What would you...
Well, it was definitely it was like my first go at producing something physical in a multiple edition that was something that could be distributed in some way.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a physical representation of my work, because the Absolute Present was online. It was like a blog.
Yeah.
But I think I always wanted something physical anyway. So the 1 year anniversary was kind of, I guess, like an excuse to actually
To print something.
to create a physical
Yeah.
object. Yeah.
Yeah. There are some people that may watch this and don't even really have that concept of you shoot and film, you go to a lab, you process it, and you come back with these prints, and you don't know what's on the film, you know? And
Yeah.
I think we were probably the last generation to really see people actually doing that in the masses, and then everything sort of changed. And this project was online, but I think that the actual body of work, I really was inspired by it because it was something that was just so present moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I thought it sort of paid homage to what we were to see become of you as you've, you know, developed your style throughout the years, you know. And that's why I love this, because you can sort of look through your work, your body of work, and it always comes back to that sort of standing point of like, you see all these fine details, you know.
I think also like the 6x4 format is a reference to those 6x4 prints you'd get, like going to the shop and getting your pictures done. And that project was all about like the everyday, and it was all about like how every tiny little moment all builds up into one mass that reflects who you are, rather than like tableau or grandioso representations in a one-off sense.
Mm-hmm.
That was all about, it's not like major events do affect you,
Yeah.
but actually the everyday workings of your life
Yeah.
are more about you.
Yeah.
And there was, during that time, I was always obsessed with this Wolfgang Tillmans idea of if one thing matters, everything matters, which was all about like the small, insignificant things being actually really significant when all brought together.
Yeah.
And that was the absolute present was a theory in psychology about everything that you've experienced has all built up to this present moment in time, which defines you in this absolute present moment, sort of thing. So that was the project was all about that, like everything of your everyday life being a representation of yourself.
I was looking on your website, and I flipped through the commissions section, and I was looking at is it Paper Journal, John Spinks?
Yeah.
I mean, I had no idea what this was all about, but I think that that's what's really nice, is that you can sort of enter your body of work, and you have this section where you can click into it, and you've got Paper Journal, and you have a series of photos, and all sort of come together and bring about this sort of story. So the idea being like, I know nothing about it, but you step into a world that is through your eyes. Like, you've got a picture of that stairwell that has like those little bits of
The leaves
debris,
on it.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, and then you've got another picture that is literally the desk with a rubber band ball, you
Yeah.
know? And I sort of feel like that is a quintessential like Maxwell Anderson photo, you know? Like, and I think it just is sort of like a day in the life of what you see. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, well, you know, what is it from the angle of the person's space that they wanted to achieve through your eyes, you know what I mean? So as it was a commission, what was your sort of approach in getting that look, or, you know, like the angle in which you took to document this person? Because what is it all about?
The Paper Journal that's like that commission was like a studio visit with an artist, and so I would go and photograph the artist and their space,
Yeah.
and then a writer would go and interview the artist. So the brief is pretty broad for me. It's like, get a couple of portraits and then get some pictures of the space. So it depends a lot on like how interesting the space is, really, because if it's a really boring space, then
Yeah.
there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
So also I get very anxious about doing jobs like that, because I think, what do they want?
Yeah.
Especially when the brief is broad, because it's like, well, what do you actually want? I don't know. So then I just try my best to actually not think about it too much. And that kind of relates to like how I approach any other project, really, because in a project I'm the commissioning editor and I'm also the artist, and I start conflicting with myself, like, what do I want to get from the project? And then me as the artist in that situation, I'm like, well, I don't know, you need to ask the editor. And then I'm the editor, and I'm like, I don't know. the artist should know. So it's like a conflict that I have all the time.
Yeah.
But if I become aware that that's the argument I'm having with myself, then I'll just try to tell myself to, do you know what, just forget about all of it and just go out and take pictures. Like, I have a project about southeast London, about the border postcodes of southeast London, and I don't really know exactly what I'm trying to do with that work, because I overthink it, and maybe I think there should be too much meaning in it. And when I have this problem with myself, then I'll just say to myself, okay, I'll just go to that space, that area, and just take some pictures that I'd enjoy taking, and then come back afterwards and then assess what I've gathered, the information I've gathered, or the material. And that was like there's a photographer, Rinko Kawauchi, and she would say like her work is about editing afterwards, and when she's taking pictures she's not thinking about it too much. The thinking comes after the act of taking pictures and then in the editing process.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people will have the complete opposite and know
sure.
exactly what they want to get before, and the act of taking a picture is actually just confirming the idea, or like creating the actual creation of the idea itself. So then, like with that commission, for example, it's like I'll go and with the portraits I'll think I just want to create a portrait that I like, which is usually quite calm, quite natural. I want the person to seem like they are comfortable in that space, which they should be because it's their space. And I don't really want, I don't want to pose too much. I won't really direct the person too much. What I'll often do is I will go and I'll talk to them, and then I'll just see how they kind of naturally put themselves, what kind of place they put themselves in. That's usually where they feel comfortable to be anyway. So then I might see that, and then I can see a picture, and then I'll just say, okay, well, let's do it here, and then I'll set up. And then when I'm setting the picture up, what I'm doing is I'm not thinking about the person, because the person has done the job for me already. I'll just set up a nice frame that the subject will be in a nicely composed within the frame, but making that frame is making the picture, and then the person is already there. And then while you're taking the picture, it's really just about, you might notice that maybe they, visually they might look better if they're looking like that rather than like that. So you might just say, just turn your body a little bit. But I'm not really telling them how to look or anything.
No.
I think you see in the pictures of John, sometimes he just looks a bit fed up and bored.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's kind of what I want. Like, I sent you a picture that I took of you a while ago. And I think even in that, like, it's obvious that in that situation, I've got a camera and you're obviously totally aware of that, but it doesn't look like you're surprised by it. It's like, maybe if I'm taking that picture in that moment, I think I'm quite aware that it's awkward if somebody wants to take a picture and you're not sort of expecting it. So if I'm taking it, I won't like wait for you to turn around and then take it. I'll wait for you to turn around to recognise that I've got a camera.
Yeah.
And then just wait for that like initial shock to sort of die down a bit, and then maybe
they come into themselves.
Yeah, and maybe even wait a bit longer so you get a bit like, well, what are you going to do? Take a picture of what? And then you relax. And then it's just about like waiting for that moment where you as the operator of the camera, you recognise, like a sixth sense in a way, you recognise when the person has actually sort of taken their guard down a little bit and sort of come into their self and react. It's a thing that I used to like to call like situational reality, and that came from a picture that I saw by Nigel Shafran, who took photographs of his wife quite a lot, and it's something that I used to try to achieve. I don't know if that now comes naturally or not, but it's like you're saying, there's pictures where it's in like sudden, in the moment, snapshot-y, like an action moment, and you don't really notice what's going on, and maybe the person is surprised, but there's not even enough time for them to be surprised, and you take a picture and then it's there. And then there's also, in opposition to that, there's like these slow, posed, very aware that a photograph is being taken moments. And I like to kind of be somewhere in between that, where it's a moment that's a natural moment, but it's not, I'm not trying to lie about the fact that there's there's you and somebody else, and that somebody else has got a camera and they're taking a picture of you, because that is always, it's an awkward thing to have a picture taken. So the situational reality thing that I used to try and keep in my mind was, I wanted the moment to be kind of a natural moment, but then also be honest about there being a communication of the photographic process there also occurring. And I guess that relates, directly to what I was saying about, I want to, if I'm going to photograph somebody, I want them to just settle into where they might naturally be first, and then build the picture around that. So then it's kind of like, it's kind of natural and in the moment, but it's also like, okay, now I'm taking a picture of you and let's work it out together.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your transition, because you took a sort of break and decided to go into publishing and self-publishing first maybe, and then into the publishing route. And I wondered, what was it that made you decide to do that? What was it that sparked your eye and the curiosity of doing it?
I think when I was in university, I used to go to the bookshop, Claire de Rouen bookshop, and the lady who owned it, Claire, she was always really, really nice to me. For some reason, we just got on really well. And whenever she kind of got to know the kind of books that I liked, photography that I liked, and she would always say, "Oh, I've got these new books in, I think you'd like." So I spent a lot of time in the bookshop learning about photography through books. But what that also meant was I was learning about the way the function of the book influences the way that you read a body of work. So then I guess the natural procession for me was that I wanted to make a book. So I got really into book making. I learned book binding, and then really in a practical sense, I did an internship with a publisher. We got on really well.
That was Chris.
That was Chris Booth, yeah. And then I still at that point wanted to be a photographer. And then I did this internship, and then when I left university, I went on to work with Chris, kind of part-time. And then it turned into a full-time position, and then I self-published my first actual book, See You Soon. And then just from there, it was, because I self-published it, I went through the whole process of editing it, of choosing the materials, of working with an illustrator, of designing it, of getting a translator to translate my text, of going to Taiwan to print it and bind it, and I just really enjoyed all that process. And then and then I was working with Chris, and then I just started to really enjoy working with other photographers to realise their book, because I enjoyed the production side of it so much.
Do you think for those people starting out, in order for them to get exposure of their work, do you think it would be about maybe getting that exhibition, or would it be like, let's contact somebody who could publish my work and come up with a book?
I think it's a really difficult question, because it's a bit of a catch-22 in a way, because speaking as a publisher, a lot of publishers will want you to have had an exhibition to do a book, because they need to sell books. Basically, at the end of the day, they need to sell their product. And a way to sell their product is if you had an exhibition, then you've got more exposure. Or sometimes they might even publish the book in at the same time as an exhibition, and then a gallery will take you on because you've had exposure, and part of that exposure would be having made a book. So
it's a hard one.
This is, I mean, and also, you know, there's photographers I know who are successful, established photographers, and even they say, you know, I still have to keep on showing my portfolio around because people will just forget me otherwise. And they're like people who have done well for themselves. This is where I think self-publishing is great, and then also self-exhibitioning or whatever. Like, have an exhibition in your living room, take some pictures of it, and then, you know, you've had an exhibition and you've got pictures to prove it. You could say 20,000 people came to it if you like. But yeah, what I mean by that is you need to actually be doing it. So that the postcards, I've made 100 of them. They're all handmade. I've sold some of them. I gave some of them to people. I had a special edition of it. But that was more, I wasn't worried about whether people bought it or had it, or whether people knew that it existed. It was more like I wanted to make it. You know, the progression after that is then, you know, then a magazine says, do you want to come and take pictures for us in this magazine? And then, you know, progression after that is then a gallery says, do you want to come and have a show? Or if you're going the other way round, if you're starting from the exhibition aspect of it, you do a few of your own exhibitions. You even get a projector and just project some images onto a wall at night and get some people to come and hang out for the evening and look at your pictures on the wall. And that's an exhibition, you know. So, you know, you're never going to just go, like, not be known and then go to a gallery and say, isn't my work great? Don't you think you should represent me? That's just never going to happen. You have to build it yourself to begin with. Because gallerists and publishers, most publishers and most gallerists, not all, they, at the end of the day, what they're running is a business that they need to make some money so they can live. And the bigger galleries they are, the less they care about the art, the more they care about the money, to be honest. And, you know, they're not going to sell a gallery's not going to sell loads of prints by somebody that nobody knows. So they're just not going to be interested. They probably won't even give you the time of the day. So you've got to do a lot of the hard work yourself in the beginning for people to even consider talking to you, at least.
You just kind of close off with asking you, sort of currently now, what are you working on? Where are you feeling like content in terms of work in photography? Yeah,
well, I think having a break, I quite consciously at the end of 2020, when I knew that I wasn't, well, mid 2020, when I knew I wasn't going to make any books, I was quite satisfied then in myself that I was telling myself that I was going to have a break from publishing. So that was quite a big relief for me. That freed up a lot of my headspace when it came to thinking about photography in general. And then the pandemic happened and there was the lockdown in the summer. And that was quite a blessing for me because it was like, I can just, if I want to make some work, I can make it, and I'm not going to worry about how good or bad it is. I'm just going to do whatever I feel makes me happy, because that's how I started with photography. Was I did it to express myself, and that made me feel good, like a therapy in a way. So I did that, and in that summer I just made a piece of work in my garden. And it was like, that's where I made my first piece of work, was just in my back garden, pictures of flowers. So that, again, was another conscious decision to kind of take a break with worry. Yeah, that's it. It was like taking a break from worrying about it and just doing something and finishing something and letting it be whatever it was, like experimentational or terrible or great or whatever, not caring, just doing it. So I made a little piece in my back garden that was like quite a piece that was like based on poetry, which is something I've been interested in, a little bit of physical experimentation, which is something I've always been interested in, but not necessarily things that I've ever actually worked into my work. I made that, and that felt really nice. And then I showed it to a friend who does a sort of an online magazine thing, and they did a feature of it, which was nice. But obviously, again, it didn't really mean anything. It was just, that was nice that somebody recognised it. And then I've always had this ongoing project for about 10 years, which is the Southeast Project. And I just, whenever I feel at a loose end,
you go back to
I go back to that. So I was going back to that a bit. And then I was experimenting with portraits in my studio, following on from the work that I did in my garden, when we could see people again. I was like, I'm just going to go with this idea of just doing whatever I want and not worrying about who's going to see it. So then I started getting people into my studio to photograph them in 2 different ways. But also the work was really a reflection on my own kind of problems with anxiety and depression and that kind of stuff, which I don't really like to talk about it. I'd rather just make the work. So yeah, it's like an issue that I've always subtly confronted in various little projects, but I've never really made a piece of work about it, because I've always thought nobody wants to see a piece of work about it.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
I think that's it, is like, that's just expression, and that's what people will relate to, because then suddenly you're like, I really connect with that.
Yeah.
You know?
But that's why that was good for me, because it was like, I didn't, during that time, I didn't really care about what people were thinking. I was like, this is something that I want to do. If it's corny or like not interesting to people or depressing, then fine, whatever. But this is making me feel excited in a way. Yeah.
Maxwell Anderson, everyone. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the content. If you liked it, please subscribe. There's more to come. Max, thank you so much. It was really great talking to you. It's been ages. maxwellanderson.co.uk. All his links and works that you might want to view will be listed in the comments below. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.